freedom of speech when it comes to giving information to the public. So they talk about wrongfully receiving or holding information that is not authorized for release, or giving it to people who are not authorized to receive it, and the people who get it are subject to charge under that. It's often has been said that the AIPAC case, the case of the Israeli lobby here, people who were accused of receiving information were for the first who did not have clearances, who were being charged under this law. Barack Obama, by the way, dropped that case, which was brought under Bush. Actually, that was not the first case. In my case, my co-defendant, Anthony Russo, was in exactly the same position. He didn't have a clearance at that time. He was just receiving the material. He held it. He didn't return it. At least at that time, they had paper. He could have returned in principle, as did the New York Times. But the wording of the law could apply to readers of the New York Times, which I believe is coming out with this information. They're not authorized to receive this classified information, even though they may very well have a need as citizens to have it. It's being wrongfully withheld from them, but they're not authorized to receive it. Unless they return it, they are subject. Now, that's not going to happen, but the journalists indeed are being put on warning that they may be subject to this.
What about the issue of the government raising the specter of attempting to prosecute Julian Assange, when the reality is he is not doing this in the United States? He's releasing documents in another country. Well,
they're trying to get the other countries to prosecute him under their laws, which are in many cases, of course, more stringent than ours. Even Britain, where I'll be going tomorrow, has an Official Secrets Act, which we don't. We had a revolution and a war of independence and a First Amendment, which they don't. But if these prosecutions proceed, and if they're successful, if they're carried, if they're held up, if they're supported by this Supreme Court, which might well not have been the case 40 years ago, then we'll have an Official Secrets Act, and the effect of that will be that they won't have to conduct investigations of leakers, after all, or who did it. They'll just have to pull in the person whose byline is on that story, the journalist, and say, who committed the crime? We're not after you. We're just after the person who violated this law. And if the reporter doesn't give the name up, they'll go to jail, like Judith Miller for 90 days before she did, in fact, cooperate. Some will go to jail, and many will not. And I think the sources from then on will have no basis other than WikiLeaks, which protects their anonymity, to get this information out that we need. So I think WikiLeaks is actually becoming more indispensable even than it was in the past. It occurred to me that if Bob Woodward, who really gives us a lot of information in his new book based on classified documents that he was shown in the administration, I would urge him to put those documents into WikiLeaks anonymously. Put them on the line. Let us all read the documents and form our own opinion. Then we'd have something like the Pentagon Papers of Afghanistan, which these documents will not be. It remains really to come out, the higher level documents, and I hope people who have access to those in the White House, in the Pentagon, but in the CIA, in the State Department, will take advantage of WikiLeaks, as a matter of fact, and give us the information we need in order to end these wars.
Now, in the last release of documents, there were 91,000 documents,
of which they've withheld so far 1 out of 5, 15,000 for damage control. WikiLeaks has not yet released those. They're working over them.
Which is the point I wanted to make. Released around 75,000. Yeah. That WikiLeaks is withholding documents concerned about issues.
Moreover, they let the Pentagon know what they were releasing. They gave them the files and code to them, and asked them actually to identify people that they hoped to be redacted from those. Now, the Pentagon refused, meaning they prefer to bring charges, and both in court and in the press, of danger, rather than actually to protect these people, showing the usual amount of concern they have over other humans.
Has the same been done with these 400,000 documents?
Yes, that's why they're going over them now. They know what's coming out, and they have every ability if people are endangered, which actually is in question to this point, the fact that there's been no damage up till now really strongly questions the claims that were made earlier, and as I say, passed on by most of the mainstream press very uncritically, that there was danger. But if there was, it may well have been in those 15,000, which WikiLeaks is properly going over still.
So what you're saying is that WikiLeaks has let the Pentagon know precisely what it is about to release?
To my understanding, they have. I'm not in the process, but I understand that they've said that they did make them aware of what it is and have invited them to cooperate in protecting those names. But as I say, the Pentagon, if there are such names, has preferred to make charges.
And is they releasing them with other papers, as they did last time, the New York Times,
yes,
Der Spiegel,
yes.
and The Guardian?
I must say, I give credit to the Times, as I understand it, and Der Spiegel and The Guardian, who are resisting, as did the Times 40 years ago, the demand or the request that they desist and that they return and that they stop serving their function
so they're doing
to protect the public.
On
they're
this
doing it again,
400,000
and it's much to their credit, and I appreciate it. I've waited 40 years for release on this scale. I think there should have been something on the scale of the Pentagon Papers every year. How often do we need this kind of thing? We haven't seen it. So I'm very glad that someone is taking the risk and the initiative to inform us better.
Well, I mean, it would seem to me, and I think this is an important point to make, as a journalist who has many times not provided the subject of the articles I'm going to write a complete view of what I have. It seems to me that WikiLeaks has gone to extraordinary lengths to allow the Pentagon to respond and to signal to it, look, if there's anything in particular here that you think endangers an individual or an operation, let us know.
They haven't given a veto to the administration, as far as I'm concerned, of anything that they might raise an alarm about, but they have said, bring it to our attention and we'll responsibly look at that, and they are redacting names, yes.
Well, I want to thank you for being with us, Dan Ellsberg, and I guess you could compliment the New York Times for something else as well, because now they no longer say, after decades, the man who claimed he gave us the Pentagon Papers, but yes, they actually admit you did.
They've actually acknowledged at last that I was the source. They're very reluctant to tell their sources, but since I was the one who was prosecuted, I claim special relations on that.
Daniel Ellsberg was a high-level official in the Pentagon and is the country's most famous whistleblower. He released the Pentagon Papers. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. Dan Ellsberg now heads to London. He'll be at the WikiLeaks news conference that releases, well, what we believe is something like 400,000 documents on the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. Iraq in particular. Iraq war. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, another Dan will be joined by Lieutenant Dan Choi. We'll be talking about the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy and have a debate over where Don't Ask, Don't Tell fits into the anti-war movement. Stay with us.
Get your most closely kept personal thought, put it in the word doc with the password lock. Sock it deep in the raw with extraction precluded by the ludicrous length and the strength of a reputedly dictionary attack proof string of characters. This imperative to thwart all that establishes of privacy, the NSA and homeliness. You better PGP the raw because so far they ain't impressed. You better take the PGP and print the hex of it out. Scan that into a TIFF, then if you secret out for your data, scramble up the order of the pixels with a one-time pad that describes the fun time had by the fixo boot-wearing stomper who danced to produce random claptrap, all the intervals in between which set in tandem with the stomps themselves begat a seed of math unguessable. Ain't no complaint about the cipher that's redressable. Best of all your secret, nothing extant could extract it. By 2025, a children speaking spell will crack it. You can't hide secrets from the future with math. You can try, but I bet that in the future they laugh at the half schemes and algorithms of mastering boys, cryptographs in the past. You can't hide secrets from the future with math. You can try, but I bet that in the future they laugh at the half schemes and algorithms.
Secrets from the Future by MC Frontalot. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Before we move on, Juan, you had a very interesting piece, your column in the New York Daily News today.
Yes, well, there is a major movement now beginning to spread all across the United States in public education. Another effort to privatize some aspects of public education, which is called value-added models to measure teacher performance in Los Angeles and several other cities. And then in New York City now it has erupted into a major battle where the chancellor of the public school system attempted to publish today, or not to release to the press today, the names of more than 12,000 teachers and the test scores of their individual students, but according to what they call a value-added model. How much did that teacher improve the test scores of their children when they were in the teacher's class? It's a very controversial, very arcane statistical model that has been created largely by economists, which attempts to quantify exactly what a teacher's real impact on a child is. What the chancellor attempted to do is actually put the names of these teachers, which of course would have created the 10 best and the 10 worst teachers and all